Dmytro first met Olena when they were both in the same class at a small-town secondary school. They sat two desks apart, sharing textbooks during lessons and occasionally working together on group projects. At that time, they were just good friends. They laughed at the same jokes, helped each other with homework, and supported one another during exams, but neither of them thought of it as anything more. After graduation, their lives took different paths. Dmytro went to a technical university in another city, while Olena moved to the capital to study economics. They kept in touch only through social media at first, sending birthday greetings and liking each other's photos. Over time, even that contact became rare. 2 years later, during a summer break, Dmytro returned to his hometown to visit his parents. One afternoon, he went to a small cafe that had just opened near the old school. By chance, Olena was there too, waiting for a friend. They recognized each other instantly and spent hours talking about their studies, their plans, and everything that had happened since graduation. The old friendship felt natural, but there was also something new, an unspoken warmth between them. After that meeting, they started messaging more frequently and meeting whenever they were both in town. Soon, their casual coffees turned into real dates. They went for evening walks in the park, where they used to go after school, and Dmytro even helped Olena with a university project, just like he had helped her with homework years before. Their bond grew stronger, built on shared memories and new experiences. Their first real date as adults was a walk along the riverbank on a warm autumn evening. Dmytro brought coffee from the cafe, where they had met again, and Olena laughed, saying it felt like a tradition. They talked about their dreams. She wanted to work in finance and travel. He wanted to start his own small engineering company. Because they studied in different cities, they could see each other only on weekends or holidays. Sometimes they argued about schedules or felt insecure about the distance, but both were determined to make it work. They planned little surprises. Dmytro would take an overnight bus just to walk with her to class in the morning. Olena would mail him handwritten letters with pressed flowers from the park where they used to meet. In their third year of university, Dmytro got an internship in the capital. It meant he could finally live in the same city as Olena. They found a tiny apartment not far from her campus and moved in together. It wasn't perfect. The walls were thin, the furniture was old, but to them it felt like home. They learned to cook simple meals side by side, to help each other study late at night, and to celebrate small victories like passing an exam or getting a scholarship. After graduation, life became even more serious. Dmytro accepted a position at a small engineering firm in the capital, while Olena began working as a junior analyst at a bank. They were proud, but also nervous. Rent, bills, and long working hours were new challenges for both of them. They supported each other in small ways. When Olena had to stay late at the office, Dmytro would cook dinner and wait up for her. When Dmytro's projects became stressful, Olena would leave little notes of encouragement in his bag. On weekends, they explored the city like tourists. Hidden parks, street food markets, small art galleries. Sometimes they traveled back to their hometown to visit family and old friends. Each visit felt like a reminder of how far they had come since their school days. 3 years after they started dating, Dmytro planned a surprise. He took Olena to the same riverside spot where they had gone on their first real date. Under the glow of streetlights and the quiet sound of water, he gave a small, heartfelt speech about how she had been a part of every important step in his life. Then he asked her to marry him. Olena, with tears in her eyes, said yes. Their wedding was simple but full of meaning. Many of their classmates came, amazed at how the two friends from school had turned their bond into a lifelong commitment. Even their old homeroom teacher attended, smiling proudly. As newlyweds, they moved into a slightly larger apartment in a quiet district of the capital. It wasn't luxurious, but it had 2 bedrooms, a balcony with a view of the park, and enough space for them to dream about the future. They painted the walls themselves, filled the kitchen with herbs in small pots, and made a habit of having breakfast together, no matter how busy their mornings were. Within a couple of years, both of their careers began to blossom. Dmytro's small engineering consultancy started winning contracts, allowing him to hire a few employees. Olena finished her master's degree and was promoted at the bank. Life became more stable, and with stability came a new dream: starting a family. When their first child, a daughter named Sophia, was born, everything changed again. Nights became sleepless, the apartment filled with baby clothes and toys, and the balcony garden was slowly replaced by a stroller. Yet they both felt happier than ever. Dmytro loved to rock the baby to sleep after long days at work, and Olena would laugh about how he hummed the same tune he had sung back in school during music class. Even with a child, they tried to keep small rituals alive: evening walks, weekend trips to visit their parents, and quiet moments on the balcony once the baby was asleep. Those routines reminded them of the journey they had shared, from classmates to young adults, from young adults to a family. 5 years later, they moved to a small house on the edge of the city. It had a yard, a swing for Sophia, and a little room that Dmytro turned into an office. Olena planted a garden, something she had dreamed about since childhood. Friends who visited often said their home felt warm and full of memories. Sophia grew from a playful little girl into a bright school student who loved drawing and music. Dmytro and Olena became the kind of parents who showed up for every recital and football game, even if it meant rushing from work. They tried to give their daughter the same sense of support and warmth that had brought them together when they were young. As their daughter grew older and more independent, Dmytro and Olena also began to rediscover themselves as a couple. They would go out for an evening walk after dinner, attend a concert together, or spend a weekend in a quiet village while Sophia stayed with grandparents. Those moments reminded them of their student days, the long talks by the river, the promises they had made to each other. By their 15th wedding anniversary, they had built a small but meaningful life. A home full of laughter, a business that provided stability, and a bond that had weathered all the ordinary challenges of adulthood. Friends often asked them the secret to their relationship. They would smile and say, "There's no secret. We just never stopped being friends." Years passed quietly and steadily. Sophia graduated from secondary school with honors and went on to study architecture. Soon she married and started her own family. Watching their daughter walk down the aisle, Dmytro and Olena remembered their own wedding day and how everything had begun. When Sophia gave birth to a baby boy named Marco, Dmytro and Olena became grandparents. Their house once again echoed with the sounds of a child's laughter, small feet running in the garden, and the smell of fresh-baked pies. Being grandparents gave them a new kind of joy. They were no longer rushing between classes or deadlines. They could sit on the floor building towers out of blocks, take Marco for slow walks to the park, and tell him stories about how his mother had once been a little girl. Life continued in this rhythm. Dmytro gradually stepped back from his company, handing it over to younger engineers he had trained. Olena retired from teaching and devoted more time to reading in her beloved garden. Their days became slower but sweeter. Every morning they still made coffee together and sat by the kitchen window watching the light change, just as they had as students in their first apartment. In the evenings, when the house was quiet again after a family visit, they would sit on the porch wrapped in blankets. Olena's hair had turned silver. Dmytro's steps were slower, but their hands still found each other without thinking. Their grandchildren loved listening to the story of how Grandma and Grandpa met in school, a story that had become a family treasure. One autumn evening, after a big family dinner, Olena leaned her head on Dmytro's shoulder and said softly, "All of this started with 2 desks in a classroom." He smiled, his eyes shining, and a lifetime of walking side by side. They had come full circle. 2 shy classmates who built a shared life of study, work, family, and quiet joy. Their story was no longer just theirs. It had become part of their children's and grandchildren's lives, woven into the memories of a new generation. The years flowed by even more gently. Sophia, together with her husband and little Marco, often visited the family home. When they opened the gate, Buro, the dog that Dmytro and Olena had adopted after retirement, barked happily and wagged his tail. Olena would always greet them with fresh pies and fragrant borscht. In the garden, the apple trees she had planted rustled softly in the wind, while Dmytro proudly showed his grandson how to care for the grapevine that climbed along the fence. In time, Sophia had another child, a little girl named Olena. Once again, Dmytro and Olena's house filled with laughter, toys, and the joyful chaos of children. Becoming grandparents for the second time felt like reliving a new kind of youth, but this time without hurry, with more patience, wisdom, and tenderness. In the evenings, Dmytro loved to sit on the porch with the grandchildren and point out the stars. He told them how, as a boy, he had dreamed of becoming an engineer, and how important it was to believe in one's dreams. Olena, meanwhile, taught them how to bake heart-shaped cookies, telling them, "The most important thing is to do everything with love."